Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. A number of you have been asking me for my thoughts on the Superman 75th anniversary animated short, or kind of trailer that went up a few days ago on DC Comics' YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it, I've put a link below in the video description where you can watch it. This was kind of an interesting experience watching it. First of all, I have to say, nobody does animation like DC, or more accurately, nobody does animation as DC can. I feel that a lot of their direct-to-video animated films have been lacking recently, and I feel that they're trying to, I know a number of you have been enjoying them, but I really have kind of checked out of DC's animated movies because I feel they're redoing comic book stories that I thought worked great on the page and don't need to be, redone as an animated film. I don't like the animation style as much. I think that they're almost trying to make like live action movies that just happen to be animated instead of, I feel, really capitalizing on the medium and telling stories that come from the best days of DC animation. For instance, obviously Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, and the Justice League shows. That stuff was really spectacular. And I feel that the direction that they've gone and away from original content to just, adapting great comic books that I think people should just read because, I don't think the movies are ever as good as the comics. I wish they would go back to making original animated films. But anyway, as for this teaser or this anniversary trailer, it's both surprised me and impressed me, but also to some degree, I think still highlights the weaknesses of the character. For the good parts of it, I really liked the way it, the thing that struck me the most was how the music changed. They started out with the classic John Williams score, and then they went to the score that Hans Zimmer did for Man of Steel. And as it changed, it was very subtle. So, only toward the end are you like, oh, wait a minute, I'm listening to the Man of Steel soundtrack. And two things struck me immediately about that. One was that I do recognize it as the new Superman score. I'm not like, what music am I listening to? It's become as distinctive to me as John Williams' music has, which is a good thing. Also, I do, as I said, I like it. So I think that shows that while I had a lot of problems with Man of Steel, I do accept it as the new Superman, and I'm hopeful that things can change. Less hopeful that they're keeping the same creative team, but I don't feel that you need to throw out the baby with the bathwater here, and that baby being Henry Cavill. So I do like this new Man of Steel. I just have incredible problems with the story. My beef with Hollywood in general these days, really bad screenwriting. So that's the stuff. So I liked that aspect, and I thought they did a really nice job with some of the symbolism. I thought it was great that they remembered the Muhammad Ali, Superman event. I wish they'd shown Muhammad Ali because I think if you aren't aware of comic books, you don't know what they're referring to in that boxing match scene. And I thought, I just think that they did a good job, kind of with like. Zack Snyder is very good at, these moving shots, and I think that you saw that here. Superman was constantly on the move. The other thing that stood out to me was the way they had his cape turn into that Death of Superman cover. I thought that was really great, and they hit a lot of emotional points for me. Comics that, I remember from my childhood, or that I have a strong emotional tie to when I did read them, even if it wasn't when they came out, and so all that was there. And I thought that was nice. What I didn't like in particular was I liked that they included the live action stuff there, both on TV and in film, but you know what? I wish that they had just dissolved into clips. Warner Brothers owns the rights to those properties, so I don't know why you would keep it animated. I could tell who they were trying to draw. I guess Henry Cavill came out the best in animation. Christopher Reeve, I was like, is that supposed to be Christopher Reeve? It was hard for me to tell, and I would have liked to have seen Christopher Reeve's actual smiling face, because I think he's just so iconic when it comes to the Superman brand. So I would have preferred that. Also, I have to say, Zack Snyder continues to be a fantastic visual director and really have very little emotional pull that he puts in himself. They got me emotionally, as I said. That's because Snyder was building on emotions that had already been, groundwork that had already been laid by the DC team and their comics. There's no personality to this trailer. And that's a constant problem with Superman. He's just, so often he's just portrayed as this do-gooder Boy Scout with a smile on his face, and you're just supposed to transpose onto him your own feelings for the character. And I think that's a mistake. I think Superman very much has a personality. I feel that, I've always felt that if you're going to give Superman a problem or a weakness, it should be his moral code. And I think Grant Morrison has touched on that. I know Scott Snyder's thinking of touching on that with his run as well. So that's what I think Superman's weakness is, that he's just, he's old-fashioned. And I think particularly in today's forward-thinking world, that's a little bit of a problem. And I think that would be interesting to be explored. The other thing that I didn't like, and I think this highlights Bruce Timm's weakness, is that Bruce Timm knows how to tell a story, but I think that he is constantly letting DC Animation not let him do his best work. I don't know why he's not fighting for content anymore. It's the same problem I have with the movies, but I feel, this could make it a little bit longer. I would have watched a lot of this. Because I really do like DC Animation, and I'm a big Superman fan. And I think it's fascinating, though, that I don't know what's wrong with this character. Well, I guess I do. I feel the character is not hitting the mark. He's not as good as he could be, Superman. But when you think about it, 4 days later, after this trailer came out, the Doctor Who 50th anniversary trailer came out on YouTube as well, and it has more views than this trailer. So I think that's interesting. Also of note, DC disabled comments on the trailer, which not cool, DC, because if you want to be in the internet world, you gotta embrace the whole thing. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You want to be on YouTube, you have to allow comments. And maybe that's partially why the video isn't doing as well, because people aren't coming back for the discussion aspects of it. You just watch it and then you leave. And you could download it, so you don't even have to watch it on YouTube if you're not going to be factoring in comments. But I'm curious what everybody here thinks. What do you think of evolution of Superman? Do you accept Man of Steel as the new Superman? Do you agree with me that it needs work? Or you just totally reject it? Or do you love it as the way it is? And what did you think of the trailer? Would you wanted more? Do you think it had enough personality? What did you think of the moments that they chose? Also, on a side note, yeah, they had some of the supporting characters, but I think they paid more attention to Superman's rogues gallery. You'll notice the Kents I don't believe they even really made an appearance. And I believe that's because they keep trying to kill them off. Because I guess maybe copyright aspects, I'm not sure, I don't know. I love the Kents. I think Superman's relationship with his parents is so integral to his character. I don't know why they keep trying to get rid of them. I think they're just so important. And I think you saw a little bit of Lois, but I didn't think very much. Jimmy Olsen just made an appearance as that lizard man. No Perry White. And Superman has a really great supporting cast. But anyway, I really wish they'd make another Superman animated series. That I would be so excited about that. Okay, so that's the first story of the day. The second kind of ties into it. Today's a big superhero day. And that's that you might have seen the news reports that Zack Snyder has already begun shooting Batman vs. Superman, or whatever he's calling it, with another football game. He was at a college game, and he used the halftime and the teams, I guess, to shoot a college game between Gotham University and Metropolis State. And, it was the same black and yellow uniforms, black and yellow Steelers for Gotham, and then red and white for Metropolis. And apparently it's supposed to be a Gotham home game. So I don't know why it's a college game. I find that very confusing, unless we're doing more flashbacks, maybe? And then I'm like, okay, I kind of like the flashback thing in Man of Steel, but, let's leave that behind. I would just like a linear story, please. And I also hope they don't have this thing where it's like, Clark Kent has known Bruce Wayne his whole life, and he didn't know the significance of it. Let's see where their paths have crossed before. I mean, I don't, that's a big pet peeve of mine. That's one of the reasons I didn't like Smallville. I really hate it when they say that everybody knew each other their whole lives, because that's not how the way the world works. You meet people, you're introduced to people throughout your life when you make big moves, and I feel it's really imperative that Clark Kent's Smallville life be very different from his Metropolis life. Then why else? Because then why else? Why did he move? So I'm not so keen about that, but I think it's interesting they're already shooting it. I don't know about including a football game again after already having one in The Dark Knight Rises, but we'll see. We'll see. I think it's, it's cool to see this movie getting underway, and just like I'm accepting the score for Man of Steel, I'm accepting Ben Affleck as Batman. So we'll see. I'm curious. They've piqued my interest. All right, so the third story, let's hop over to Marvel, where Kevin Feige is doing a lot of press for Thor: The Dark World, and he said a number of things. First of all, that his contract is pretty much good through Phase 3. I'm sure I would be surprised if they wouldn't renew it, unless Guardians of the Galaxy is the biggest gamble that doesn't pay off of his career. Or unless he wants to leave. But I just think there's so much money being made there, and he's probably having so much fun because he is a fan of comics, that I see them continuing to stay. He's probably just mentioning that for negotiation purposes. He's taking a page from Robert Downey Jr.'s book. And why not? It worked great for Robert Downey Jr. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that he also talked about his Daredevil plans. And he said, I think that we have the rights back, and he also mentioned we have the rights back to Punisher here at Marvel Studios, so maybe they'll kind of show up in the same film. And I think that's interesting to make kind of like a Marvel Knights film. I would hate it to be a team book right off the bat, and I think But Marvel does very well with these cameos where a character will show up and they kind of gauge the audience interest. Hawkeye showed up in Thor, and Black Widow made her introduction in Iron Man 2, and so I can see how it works. But I do like the idea of them kind of doing a darker film at Marvel and seeing if they can, edge into DC territory a little bit. And Marvel Knights is obviously the brand to do that. So I think so. Kevin Feige said a Daredevil movie isn't like a top priority right now, but it's something they're actively pursuing, and when they get the right idea, they'll make it. I mean, I don't know when. Their slate is so crowded, and they already have a Doctor Strange movie on the burner. It's just like the real traffic jam over there. I mean, it's easier to put out comic books than it is comic book movies. So I'm curious what you guys think. Do you want a Daredevil movie? Do you want a dark Marvel Knights brand? Or do you think they should really be focusing on just feeding into their Avengers line over at Marvel Studios? I'm not sure how I feel. I think I'd have to hear more about it. I thought I wanted a Fantastic Four movie, but as some of you have been saying, now that it seems to be just like Fantastic Four, the Glee version, I couldn't care less. All right, so I found a superhero question for today, and it's from Carlos Cruz. And he asks, Grace, do you think there can be another Marvel DC crossover, whether in the comic books, the movies, or TV? Or is there a better chance to have Fox make a deal with Disney and make a deal for Avengers versus X-Men? It's funny you asked that, Carlos, because somebody asked Kevin Feige as well if there would be an X-Men Avengers crossover. And he said basically no, but never say never. He didn't want to take it totally off the table. But I think that's very unlikely. I think that Fox and Marvel have a pretty contentious relationship. I mean, look at the fight they're doing over Quicksilver, and I think Fox won that, by the way. I know some of you have been saying that Aaron Taylor Johnson has been claiming that he is the new Quicksilver, but remember, only Aaron Taylor Johnson is talking about it. Joss Whedon has been very quiet about Quicksilver recently, and no announcements have been made from the Marvel camp. And I think they would be crazy to be stuck to weigh down the Avengers with these dueling Quicksilvers. And they already have a growing cast that's huge for the Avengers. So Avengers 2. So just let him go. Let him go to the Bryan Singer camp, and God bless him. All right, so that's the situation there. Also, by the way, later today I'm putting up an interview I did last night at the Bad Grandpa premiere, New York premiere, with Jamie Alexander, who plays Sif. And you'll see she talks about Sif's future a little bit and gives a pretty strong hint. So I think that's pretty cool about where Sif might be showing up going forward. So anyway, do I think there'll be a crossover? I don't think there'll be a crossover with Fox, and I don't think there will be a crossover with DC. But I think there could be a crossover with Sony. And the reason I think this is because Marvel is never, ever going to get the rights back to Spider-Man. Like Taylor Swift says, they are never, ever, ever getting back together. Yes, I'm sorry, but it was an appropriate quote, so I had to quote Taylor Swift. But I just feel that because the deal that Sony made, it was the first big Marvel deal, pretty much. It was a huge deal, and it's forever. And it was such a big deal that, as I've reported before, Marvel actually sold a stake in the Spider-Man character to Sony. Sony doesn't just own the film rights. So whenever Marvel makes a comic book, whenever they're going the Spider-Man stories, Sony has to, weigh in on that, or at least, they're aware of what's going on. If Sony had a problem with something that was happening in the comic books, they could stop it. So since Marvel will never get Spider-Man back, I think there is some chance that a deal could be worked out there. And as I reported when the Avengers came out, Avi Arad, who used to run the Marvel films, now works and handles the Spider-Man universe for Sony, he is interested in maybe a potential crossover. But at the same time, remember that Sony is trying to build a Spider-Man universe themselves, with a potential Venom movie and stuff like that. I don't think that's going to work out for them. I don't think Spider-Man. I don't think Spider-Man can handle a universe. But I think that it would be worth the money to have him show up in Avengers 2, even just for a cameo. I think that would be huge. It would help Sony's franchise. And, Marvel really wants the characters to succeed and stay current, and they're never going to get him back anyway. So that's my thoughts. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. That's today's Morning Movie News. Write down below what you think of today's story and viewer question, and anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions you want to see answered. Thanks for watching. Bye.